Hi, my name is Jordan McKee. I'm a principal analyst at 451 Research, part of S&P Global Market Intelligence, covering digital payments. And with me today is Michael Bellata, Global Head of Digital Goods and Services from Worldline. Welcome, Michael.
It's great to be here, Jordan.
So today we're here to discuss the rise of open banking. And when I think about the future of retail payments, one of the things that excites me most about open banking is the potential and the possibility that it holds for merchants. Just to level set on the definition, open banking is really a framework for third parties, including merchants, to access customers' bank account information. That includes payment credentials and account details from financial institutions through the use of open APIs, of course, with the customer's permission. It's a trend that admittedly is in a state of evolution. It's seeing varied degrees of uptake and implementation in different markets around the world. But for those merchants that are able to effectively harness it, it can lead to a wide variety of different advantages. It can serve to elevate the customer experience. It can drive operational improvements and operational efficiencies. And really, it can create a platform for innovation. So where I'd love to start the discussion is really around the transformative impact that open banking can have for digital businesses. Michael, from your perspective, how do you see open banking creating a transformative impact for digital businesses of different varieties?
Let's explore this from three different angles. The first being the customer experience. According to Accenture, who's one of the largest consulting firms in the world, by the year 2026, 1/4 of all transactions in Europe will be facilitated by open banking technology. So if we look across that fairly short time horizon, what we see is that as open banking continues to gain traction, it will help to solve the paradox of choice for consumers. The second angle is around a unique white label aspect to Worldline's installation of open banking that allows businesses to create a self-branded payment method, and in so doing, really evolve the customer journey and the payment journey. And if I bundle those two together to the third point, that is the possibility and the likelihood of open banking to really amplify the conversion metrics of the businesses that deploy its technology. Jordan, I'm curious from your perspective and in your experience, does that jive with what you're seeing in the market and what you hear from other businesses that you speak with?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I really like your point about the customer experience impact. And really the way in which I think about checkout is kind of the inflection point of the customer journey. As a digital business, you've done so much to get that customer down the funnel. Really, they're a shopper up until that point. They're about to become a buyer. And then that moment of payment is introduced. And as a merchant, right, it's in your best interest to push back against friction wherever possible. And one of the biggest areas of friction that we see in payments today is limited options at checkout. And actually what we saw in a recent consumer survey was 78% of consumers state that if their preferred payment method isn't available at checkout, they're less likely to return to that merchant in the future. So that's not only an impact to conversion, it's also an impact to customer lifetime value, which is quite concerning. And when I think about the next 3 to 5 years, I really see open banking evolving as a payment method that's increasingly going to factor into customers' preference at checkout. So we talked a bit about the customer experience aspect of open banking. This is obviously very important, but one of the other areas of importance are the operational advantages that open banking brings to the table for digital businesses. Open banking can drive both top and bottom line improvements. That's something that's going to excite really any business leader across the organization. And Michael, from your perspective, I mean, you're out there talking to merchants about this type of technology. I'd love to hear a bit more about how open banking can be used to drive monetization of digital goods and services for merchants.
You're spot on. We need to look at this from a top line growth and a bottom line profitability standpoint. So top line, we already talked about conversion as it emanates from the customer experience and the payment journey. Something interesting to unpack now is one of the underlying fundamentals of open banking technology, which is called the Account Information Services, or AIS. And what this allows businesses to have access to is enriched data about their consumers. And having that enriched data allows them to deploy things like credit scoring, which will help them to understand the likelihood of a good transaction and thus prop up top line revenue growth. From a bottom line standpoint, there's two things that we need to touch on. The first is cost of acceptance. So in comparison to payment methods like credit and debit cards and also e-wallets, open banking has a lower average cost of acceptance. And so for every unit of revenue, businesses using open banking technology will be more profitable. The second thing to highlight is Worldline's cash management solution, which sends a notification to businesses as soon as good funds hit our account. It's not only a cash management tool, but it also helps to mitigate against the risk of eventualities for other payment methods such as reversals and chargebacks. From a monetization standpoint, Jordan, is there anything else that you would add to that?
Yeah, I really liked your point about the cost of acceptance. So this is an area that will come up inevitably in any conversation with a merchant as it relates to payment acceptance. It's a top area of priority. And actually what we saw in our recent Voice of the Enterprise survey, where we went out and talked to about 250 commerce and payments decision makers at merchants of varying sizes, is that 2 in 5, right, said lowering the cost of acceptance is a top priority for their organization this year. And exactly as you said, open banking plays to that goal from a couple of different vantage points. One, because there are fewer intermediaries in the transaction. The cost of that transaction is inherently lower for the merchant, especially compared to cards and different forms of wallets. And two, because that customer is actually authenticating that transaction directly with their financial institution, it can be argued that there's lower risk associated with that payment, and that has a strong story around lowering fraud losses and also lowering chargeback costs. So we talked a lot about some of the excitement surrounding open banking. There's a lot to be gained for merchants, but this is still a technology that's in a state of evolution. And as a merchant, right, it's really important to have a sound strategy in place to realize a lot of these advantages that we've discussed here. Michael, from your perspective, what do you see as some of the best practices for digital businesses when it comes to harnessing open banking?
To use your words, every business will harness and deploy open banking a little bit differently. So the most important thing to highlight here is that if you're listening to this and open banking is an interesting technology for your business, to get in touch with the experts at Worldline to have more of a bespoke conversation. Now, that being said, there are two more broad best practices that I can bring to the table. The first has to do with data. Clearly, data and data protection is something that's very much in the zeitgeist these days, as evidenced by regulations such as GDPR. So it's crucial for businesses that are utilizing open banking technology to be 100% transparent with their customers around how that data is going to be used. And secondly, earlier we touched on the ability for customers to create a self-branded payment method. Now, the best practice there is to create awareness of that payment method at the top of the funnel. And then from the landing page through to checkout, ensure that it is abundantly clear to consumers that a unique payment experience is on the menu.
When I think about open banking and I think about where it's at in its state of evolution, this isn't going to be a build it and they will come type of technology. There's a lot of potential, there's a lot of promise, there's a lot to be gained, but as a merchant, it's crucial that you're promoting awareness. It's crucial, right, that you're driving education for your customers to really ensure that this becomes a payment method that becomes widely adopted and widely used across the customer base. So I think that's a really good point to leave us on today. Michael, I really enjoyed the conversation and appreciate your insights today.
Thanks a lot, Jordan. It was great being here with you. For anyone listening that's interested in learning more, please connect with me on LinkedIn or visit us at worldline.com.
And if anybody would like to learn more about 451 Researches in the area of open banking and digital payments, you can find out more at 451research.com. Thank you.